This droid was built by my nephew Jude. He wanted me to show all of my friends who like Star Wars this custom creation. It is inspired by a pit droid. And I got inspired to build a custom droid of my own and invite a few friends to join me. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to Boylai Hobby Time. I started off this build by doing a quick sketch of what I kind of wanted this droid to look like. I ran to the hobby store and I picked up a model kit, or two, or three. Needless to say, I did not follow the instructions for this build. I used a lot of the pieces as they were not intended, but I knew I wanted to have the head and the body pretty much as is, with just a few slight modifications and mutilations. I removed the rest of the pieces from the sprues, and then I threw in a few other pieces that I stole from a Gundam. I carved out and cut a few holes in the main body section so that later on I could stuff some wires and internals in there and have them visible, to give it kind of a derelict feel. I also made some shoulder pads from the feet of the Gundam. I made a little neck out of a styrene tube, and then I used a few more pieces to complete the shoulders. I wanted it to look like there was a hole that had been patched up by a little grate, so I cut up this metal mesh and I glued that over the holes. Also added some little bits and pieces to the recesses to suggest mechanical working parts. That little piece there is left over from a Boba Fett model. I also added some guitar strings to look like little cords and cables. I drilled some holes next to the neck where some wires would run up from the body into the head. And I cut out a few little sections of guitar string, which I glued to the head and then very awkwardly tried to get to fit into the holes on the body. There had to have been a better way to do it. I just didn't know what it was. But eventually I got it and looked pretty good. For the legs, I made a femur out of some styrene, which I glued to the top section of the Astromech's legs, and then I bulked those out with pieces of the Gundam. Conveniently, the hip joints for the Astromech fit this 1/8 inch styrene tube perfectly. So it's just a matter of cutting the tube to the right length to get the width of the hips correct, and I had a semi-articulating pair of droid hips that do not lie. Connecting the legs to the torso proved to be a little bit difficult, but I was able to find another piece that fit that 1/8 inch tube just right, and then I used the left and the right foot from the droid to create the pelvis. Then glued on another little round piece from the Gundam and did my more difficult than necessary guitar string trick to add some cords from the legs up to the torso. I also added a tube down to that red piece, which is supposed to be a jetpack. It ended up kind of looking like a diaper. I'm not sure why I put that there, but I did. I also added a few other pieces to his back to make a little backpack looking thing. And if you've noticed, I've cut styrene tubes multiple times in this video and they've gone flying across the room. Apparently I don't learn from my mistakes. Let me know if you counted how many times I sent a tube flying. I cleaned up my workstation because it was getting a little bit out of hand, and I made these kneecaps out of joints from the Gundam. Also made the lower legs out of more pieces of styrene. And I added a little wire in the center of the styrene that I ran up the femur as well. This allowed for a little bit of articulation after it was all glued in place. To make the arms look a little more interesting, I added another hinge on either side underneath, and a bunch more guitar strings. Wanted them to look kind of like ligaments or exposed muscle. I did the same thing for the legs. I had a little shoulder cape left over from that same Boba Fett figure that I got that chest plate from. I thought that would look good on here, but after I had the feet in place and the cape, kind of looked to me like this droid was getting ready to go to the Renaissance Fair. I bulked up his feet and his lower legs a little bit, and then I moved on to making him a staff out of some various sizes and lengths of metal tubing. I used the same method to create a few antennas for his backpack and his head, and that was the construction done. Then I took him outside and I primed him with a zenithal highlight. I've been watching a bunch of painting channels recently to try and improve my own skills, and one of my favorites has been 52 Miniatures. He had this video that I watched recently where he made his own contrast paints using a contrast medium from Games Workshop. So that's what I decided to do for this build. Everything starts off very pastel and muted, like an Easter egg. But after you layer up your paints and add your washes, the results are really, really nice. After I had all of the main colors on, it was time to start adding the washes. I wanted it to look like this droid had been wandering around for a very long time on a junk planet. Maybe it's been years since his last software update. I don't really have a backstory for this droid yet, but I am open to suggestions. If you have any thoughts about a backstory for him, leave those down in the comments. After a little bit more weathering, I dry brushed some metallic paint over various areas to make them look a little bit more metallic. I dry brushed his cape, and I added some little dots of gloss varnish to create a lens over each of his eyes. Next, it was time to create a little pile of assorted junk to help set the mood. And speaking of junk, I invited Bill Making Stuff to join this droid making collaboration, but he had just finished a great video building 4 doodlebots from junk. You should go check that video out if you have a chance. It's pretty fun. After the glue had dried, I primed the base with the zenithal highlight, added some black and brown washes covering the whole thing, not being too careful where I put what color, just wanted everything to kind of blend together. And of course I added some rust, and I dry brushed on some metallic paint. Then I painted the sides of the diorama with a black 3.0, and when that was dry, I put the droid in place, and I called it good. that is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Please do go check out all the rest of the videos from the creators in this collaboration. All of their projects turned out really great. Those will be linked below. Thank you to all of my patrons. You guys are great. Have an awesome week, everyone. I'll see you next time.